típica. No.
Nada, buenos días a todos. No voy a presentar a Roger, ya me parece que todo el mundo lo conoce. Hace semanas que lo estamos esperando y finalmente ya ha llegado. Y nada, os dejaré aquí con ellos.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's all up to you now.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Well, first of all, welcome, and right. Thank you. Well, first of all, welcome. In the name of everyone here, I'd like to say thank you for being here. I'm sure I don't speak for myself when I say that many of us look very much up to you. So it's quite hard to believe that this is even happening. Well, you asked for a conversation with students. I imagine this is why they put me up here instead of a more teacher. This is a conversation, so by all means, if you have any questions at any time, do ask away. We have structured the conversation a bit with help of a lot of the students. So if we're going to go over some topics, we do intend to get through all these topics. So if you have any questions related to the topics, that would be the time to ask them. And if you have any remaining questions not related, we have a space of time at the end of the conversation, which is when we can ask those questions. Sound good to you?
Sure. Whatever.
Perfect. Well, without further ado, one of our own cinematography teachers, Edu, that's him. He's not nervous at all. He usually starts off our first year, with a question, asking us, what is the first ever movie you remember seeing in a cinema? So I thought it would be very adequate to start off the conversation like that. Do you remember maybe, what's the first film you've ever seen?
The first film I ever saw wasn't in the cinema. My dad had brought a projector back from Germany at the end of the war, and we could rent cartoons. So I remember watching Felix the Cat, and in our attic with this little, what would it have been, 9mm projector it was, I think, back then, different format. And I remember watching cartoons. Other than that, I mean, the first movie, I don't know, I must have seen films before this, but I think the first film that really affected me was Peter Watkins' War Game. But it was the middle of the Cold War and we were about to get annihilated, so it kind of had quite an effect, yeah, really.
What about you, James?
I know it's probably not the first movie I saw, but the first movie that really affected me, in those days they used to do double features, so they would play one and then they would play the other. And they kept this movie on, but it was always the other feature that my sister and I would want to see, but of course if we're going to pay for it, we're going to see both. So the first feature was Die, Monster, Die.
Oh,
and we
good
started in the first row, we moved back to the second, and we did this every time. We'd move back to the third, the fourth, and we'd end up in the end of, so it kind of taught me the power of movies.
Yeah, I went to, my first date with a girl was to see Sound of Music, and she bawled all the way through it, and I couldn't figure it out. I thought it was so appalling. So that was the end of that relationship.
And what would be the first film you consider that you started really seeing the light or seeing the camera movements or what the DP's work? When did you start really noticing? Do you remember a specific film or period in your life?
Oh, I think that was early on, because I mean on TV to watch a lot of film noir. I used to love watching Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake and those kind of films. Robert Ryan, great actor, and Robert Mitchum and that. And I remember seeing the cinematography there, and thinking that was pretty amazing, the imagery they created. But I mean, this is way before any idea of a career in film. You know, it was just, yeah.
It's kind of where the love starts. Then, time.
I guess. I don't know. You know, yeah. I mean, I imagine it was as much an escape at that point as anything else. I certainly didn't see it as anything to do with my personal life, other than that sort of, you know, something that was magical. Yeah.
Well, next we'll start putting on a fragment, followed by a question by one of my classmates, Marlene. There she is. Well, the fragment, please.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Ah.
Oops.
Well, just in case this confuses anyone, this is not one of their films.
I wish, you know. I mean, yeah.
But we thought of starting off this subject by showing something that we are pretty sure you both like, and give way to the next question. Marlene, does she have a mic already? Mic's coming your way.
Hello. Okay, so first of all, I really want to express again the gratitude we all feel for you being here. This really means a lot to us and to all of our professors. And a big thanks to Yoel and Fanny for making this possible. Yes, so we've just seen a fragment of the movie Armée des Ombres by Melville. And we wanted to know what especially stands out for you from this movie, and why has it made into your list of favorite films? And while we're at it, James, what is your favorite film?
Well,
And
this
why?
is one of my favorite films. I love this.
Yeah, why? I mean,
It's almost the matter-of-factness that the story's told with, right?
yeah, but the story itself, you know, just, yeah, I mean, it feels like the most realistic movie about the French Resistance, and as it's based on a book, pretty closely to the book. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think I love films that, yeah, I mean, a lot of films that are about something and about a character going through an experience, and I don't know. It's kind of books I read, the kind of music I listen to. You know, it's all part of a theme somehow. They're quite dark.
But it's also that he told such a stirring story simply. For instance, the scene with the radiator, where they had the one collaborator that they were going to have to kill because he was going to be gotten to. And it just was, instead of it being very dramatic, they were just discussing it.
Yeah,
It
there's
was
a
chilling.
sort of coldness and matter-of-factness about the way it's shot and everything. But you look at just that scene, it's all about Lino, you know, it's all about that character and experiencing what's happening from his perspective. I mean, obviously Robert Bresson did it way before Melville, and they're kind of similar in a way. One of my other favorite films is A Man Escapes. And, you know, there's like hardly a camera move in it, or when it does, it's just, but it's just so intense. And you contrast that with a lot of movies that are cut, and that you see a scene from so many different perspectives. You're not drawn into it, but these filmmakers draw you into a character. And for me, I find the most interesting thing about films and life, you know, is just understanding other people, frankly. You know, otherwise it's just pretty pictures.
Oh, that's great. Since we're on the topic of movies you like, and well, I would like to ask you about both of your influences or your references or things that have inspired you outside of the world of cinema. So photographers, art, anything at all that influences your work or inspires you to make more?
Funny thing is, I work in fabric, and I with shapes, and it's sort of a modern quilting kind of thing, but also other kinds of things. So for me, it's very much like what we do on film, because it's colors and what colors go by what and which becomes stronger and then shapes. So that's, and for you it's fishing, isn't it?
No, I mean, I think, yeah, I love that, but I just love being out in nature. But I mean, I think you're kind of made up of all the experiences you've ever had.
Yeah.
You know, you could mention a whole number of painters that have, you kind of whose work you admire, and photographers too. I mean, one of the most influential photographers on me was, I mean, he's a great photographer, Roger Main, but I mean, he was an influence on me because he actually taught at the art college I was at, only for a couple of weeks, but just having a connection with somebody that did what he did, and yeah, having a personal connection. I mean, there's plenty of other photographers whose work I love, but I've never met them, you know.
But also the painter, Edvard Munch. We try and go and see exhibitions whenever we can because his sense of color is amazing and his framing. And we went to a wonderful exhibition in Oslo one time where he painted it about 8 to 10 times the same picture, but he would change the framing slightly. And it was so illuminating to see his process and to see how, if you put a character on this side instead of this side, how it strengthens whatever you're trying to say.
Yeah, but there's that other painting, my favourite, is a sick child about his when he was a teenager, I guess. His sister died of cholera or something, I can't remember. But he's done this painting of the family around the girl in the bed, and he's done it over and over again, all through his life he'd done it. And the brushstrokes change, and the later brushstrokes are really thick and kind of angry. And it's really interesting how he's trying to express that one moment in his life, trying to come to terms with it, really. And, you know, those things really kind of affect you. Anyway.
It's quite a gamble with the picture in the background, I thought. I thought I heard you mention one time as well that you...
Yeah, I mean, Eggleston's interesting, yeah. I mean, because he was one of the first photographers really did sort of... I mean, like some of the surreal images, there's a better one of the toy in the yard, isn't there, in Santa Fe? But yeah, its use of colour and just the sort of slight surrealism of his work. But colour photographers, I would go for Giorgio Pinkhausen or Alex Webb and Harry Griot, two of whom we've met recently, which was really nice.
Alex Webb actually had a house close to mine in Ibiza.
Oh, really?
Well, at any point, if people have questions, they can start putting their hands up and just letting that out there. Next, I'm quite a fan of... Oh, that sounds louder. I'm quite a fan of the first question you usually ask on your podcast. So I'm going to throw it right back at you. How have you gotten to here? And did you always know you wanted to do this? Especially, well, Roger, we know you've been to the NFTS. You went through film school. But James, have you gone through film school too?
No. I went to college, and when I went to college, I had done an advanced placement course in high school, and they had asked me to do the economic interpretation of the economic interpretation of Charles Beard's of the Constitution of the United States. So for me, it was all theory, and I had a great time. So I thought, I'll go to college and I'll major in economics. Oh my God, the first year was NNP, GNP. It was awful. So in the meantime, I was taking classics in translation because I had done a lot of Latin and Greek. So I ended up, long story short, I did a graduate course in Latin because I had had so much, and an undergrad in Greek, never planning to use it. But while I was in the university, I got together with some friends, and for the university, we did multimedia shows, which were slideshows with sound. And so we did like junior orientation, freshman orientation, all of that stuff. But we had to do one on rape on campus, and they really didn't want us to use the word. And there were a lot of young Southern girls that just, had to be told things. And so date rape was what they really didn't want us to talk about, that it could be someone you know. So working on that, I realized if we told it with familiar spots around the campus, that would be driving it home to them, hey, this actually can happen. So it was the first time that I realized that the visual can tell you something without saying it in words, because the university was only hearing the words and wasn't thinking that way. So that got me interested, and then I thought, I do want to tell stories, I do want to do this. So I went to New York and started in a film lab. And so I was only supposed to be there 6 months, but they gave me the title of supervisor, so all the guys from the bottom of the lab would come up to me and say, the CRI has Newton rings, should I run it through the bath again or redo it? And of course I didn't know what a CRI was or what Newton rings were. So I had to go and check. I said, I'll get back to you. So I learned so much that way. So that, my background, my technical background comes from that. And then got out and went into script supervising and then went on from there.
Right. And Roger, since we know you work together, how do you think James before and after impacted your life, professionally,
That's
of course?
That's a loaded question.
Professionally, of course, like work, because naturally before meeting her, you were a DP on your own. Now you have her on your team. How has that impacted your work life?
I don't know what to say. It's made it a lot better. I mean, it's just changed it in a great way. It's freed me up in a way. I mean, the role of cinematographer actually is quite stressful, and it's helped me in no end in that way.
Share the weight.
Well, I think I think that so many cinematographers have come up to me and say, will you work for me? Because I think that what a cinematographer has to do, there's so much, and to be able to focus on what you're actually shooting that day is so important. But then, of course, production wants to know about the next week. So having someone that has your back and can say to them, no, not this crane, but that crane, and you have to make sure that it's there, it allows the cinematographer to be on the set and thinking, is this light working or not? Really focusing on what they're doing.
But it's also, I do operate as well, so I'm just on the set and concentrating on the set all the time. But movies have got more complicated, not just because they're sort of big and huge budgets, not that. It's just they have become more complicated because of the technology, and you would think, okay, if you go to a digital capture, you'd think things would get simpler, and you see the image, you don't have the worry of what's going to happen in the morning when you ring the lab for a report and all that. You'd think it'd get easier, but it doesn't. It just expands, and then there's all the post-production processes, and producers think they can change what you're doing or what the director's doing or the cinematographer's doing and everything else, and it's like, it's got more complex. But me, I'm a very simple person. I just want to be on the set with the camera and concentrate on what's going down the lens,
I think that also a really big thing that I do, because nowadays there's so much visual effects, and visual effects oftentimes want to do something that's completely contrary to what the cinematographer wants to do. Oh, put a blue screen. Well, we don't really want that kind of blue bounce. Oh, do this, do that. So what I do in the very beginning of the shoot is I sit down with them, because I can talk their language, and say, okay, make them feel heard, because I think it's important, because visual effects are important, but there are always 15 different ways to do it. So negotiate a way.
They're all wrong, really, aren't they?
No, Roger, that's the attitude that you don't walk in the room with. So, you just negotiate and say, okay, what is it that you need? What elements do you need? Well, can we do it this way? Could we try it that way? And I think it's important, because the shoot is a long thing, and if you're at odds with the visual effects, then all along the way it's going to be a struggle, and somebody's not going to get what they want.
We hear that, people? We should all have more Jameses in our life. On to the next two clips. These are from your movies. Rodrigo from year one, I'm not sure, he'll be asking the question.
Oh my God,
onto the
that's a
clip.
picture of us.
That's really interesting you put those two together, because I only just realised the similarity on the two scenes. And the fact that both films were bleach bypass.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's really interesting. I never thought of that.
Thank you.
You ruined it for me.
You thought it was new.
Yeah.
The similarity of these two scenes, because it's one of your earliest movies done in 1984, and then it's one of your lastest films, Jarhead. And we saw these similarities, and I thought to myself, this is interesting, and I wanted to know, in that span of time, since you filmed 1984 to when you filmed Jarhead, how did you manage all your emotions when you were filming? Were you stressed the first films and then it became better, or it became worse in the years? And that's all I wanted to know.
Nerves.
Worse. No, but I think, I mean, you get, why does anybody get stressed out? It's because they care about what they're doing, surely, isn't it? I mean, if you could just do it by rote, and you would think, yes, I did 1984, so I could just tick the boxes and, you know, and just do it simply. But it's never like that, is it? Because you're always looking for something that you have in your mind, but you know you're never going to get, but you want to get as close as possible, you know. And, you know, films, 1984 was one of the best experiences I've ever had. And it was probably the relationship I had with Mike, the director, because I'd done one film with him and a number of documentary things with him prior to that. And just so much is about the collaboration and the kind of common, you know, visual kind of approach to it. Jarhead, I mean, not saying I didn't get on with Sam really well. I did on Jarhead. It was also one of the best experiences I had. But Jarhead we shot very, very differently. We shot, I mean, especially this scene, which is probably the favorite scene I've ever shot, this one with the horse, is that's semi-documentary, because we set up the situation and then we would just start shooting, and basically I shot it all handheld. I mean, maybe the scene you showed in the theatre was slightly more constructed, but for the most part the film was handheld, and we kind of like discovered it. I mean, that's probably a bit of a silly word, but you know, as we worked with the actors, we kind of honed down on the shot what we wanted, you know, and the way we covered it.
And that worked because Sam had such a strong idea of what he wanted. If he didn't have that idea and just tried to find it on the day, that's when you get into trouble. When you're literally...
It's not to say we hadn't prepped it. We had an idea of where we wanted to go and the feel of the film, but we didn't storyboard or didn't really discuss specific shots before we actually got to the set and then work with the actors. Yeah.
I think in answer to your question too, the stress is always there, but it does depend on the shoot, how bad it is, because a shoot is a combination of different people, different situations, different studios, different pressures, and so you can get on a shoot that you think was going to be really simple and easy to go, but ends up being pretty horrible, just because of the situation. So it's don't go on a set and expect no stress, is all I can say.
It was interesting on 1984 that the crew I assembled, the gaffer, had never gaffed a film, but he'd done pre-rigging for me on a couple of rock videos, and I thought his rigging was really good. The focus puller I'd worked with on a couple of short films, I think, a few documentaries, and so the crew are people that I knew and really liked, but didn't have a lot of technical experience, frankly. I mean, John Higgins, the gaffer, and we on some of 1984 we used Brute arcs, which, you know, the old carbon arcs, and I'd never seen one before, only on a set in the far distance once when I visited a set, and he'd never. I think he'd used one as an electrician, but not as a gaffer. So, you know, so we kind of learnt things together, you know, and that's although on Jarhead the team I had with me were more experienced by then, they were still people that basically the gaffer hadn't really done much as a gaffer before we started working together. We did a couple of Coen Brothers films together before this one. And yeah, an assistant who was on this, I met on Barton Fink and worked with up until Empire Light, so maybe 35 years probably. So, you know, so the team, I'm just going round and round way to get back to that whole stress thing, that if you've got a team, you've got people with you, like I'm lucky to have James with me, but I also have, you know, Andy and Bruce at Dolly Grip and all these people that I've worked with for many, many years and support, you know.
I can imagine that helps the nerves when you can think you have them behind you to...
You can also laugh a lot more too.
You can laugh
and know that you've been through it
things
before.
Get tough, yeah.
Any questions, or shall I continue on? All right.
Oh, you had a question?
Yes. What is your relationship with the gaffer and the director in our films? How do you work with?
The relationship with the gaffer.
The relation with the gaffer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very hands-on, and I spend a lot of time thinking in prep, thinking about how I'm going to approach something. So by the time I come to a tech scout, which you have with the crew, time I come to talking to the gaffer about a scene, I'll have a very specific plan of how I want to light it, and then we just go from there. So,
which I think is different from some DPs that more say to the gaffer, what do you think? And the gaffer has a lot more to do about designing the lighting, but Roger's always sort of designed it and put it on we have lighting diagrams, and then of course the gaffer has ideas and everything like that, but it is coming from Roger.
Yeah, I always like to have a sort of master plan, and then it can change, you know, like I usually go onto a, you know, I usually go to work in the day with something in my head about what that scene's going to look like visually, and a very kind of quite strong idea and a plan of how to do it, and then it can change. I mean, often you just rip it up and do something else. I've done that with Billy the gaffer I work with most in the States. Not often, but sometimes we go on the set and you have this sort of plan, and then you go, yeah, wait a minute, let's change that around, let's do something very different. So you want to be open to new ideas, but I do like to have a concrete plan.
And also sometimes the blocking get changed.
Yeah, well, the blocking changes.
If the blocking changes, then maybe you have to change your lighting to deal with that. But
yeah.
Well, next we have 2 more fragments with a question from Nuria, from my class as well. We'll continue.
Hi. From camera movements to lens effect and all the way through lightings, do you have any pet peeves, and why? For example, we know that you are a big fan of zooms, yet we just saw one. So how do you handle the situation with your director if he wants one of them? Thank you.
Oh, I remember that zoom shot in 1984 very clearly, because you know, I've used zooms in a number of films. What I'm not a fan of is using a zoom as an alternative to put a prime lens on, because you know, just director will just let's shoot a close up. Don't bother to move the tripod. We'll just zoom in, and it's a totally different psychological effect. The audience looking at something that's shot on an 18mm as something that shot on 100mm. It's a totally different perspective. I mean, it's nonsense. But I mean, in 1984, that was very much combining a shot that was that became a point of view. It was like you're looking around and you're concentrating on something, and that was the idea, just to draw the audience in with the gaze of John and Susanna. Yeah, but it's very selective. I mean, Jean-Pierre Melville used zooms all over the place, but they're very kind of restrained. And again, very, very much, there's a couple in that Army of Shadows clip. It's very, very deliberate, panning off Leno's face towards the end of where he's got to run, and back again. I mean, it's very specific things. It's not just, oh, let's put a zoom on so we can grab a load of shots. I just find that really sloppy. I'd like to think, well, what lens do we want to shoot this scene on, this shot on, and very specifically say, okay, well, the wide shot will be on a 28, and then we'll move in, we'll do a 35 or whatever,
Shoot it, not cover it, right?
Exactly, shoot it and not cover it. I mean, even with well, not even, but the Homicide there with David Mamet, I mean, everything was very constructed, although I think it looks more like it's sort of documentary-ish than certainly than 1984. And the scene from 1984 had to be constructed because part of it's a set, but part of it's a location. So when you actually see the woman down below, you're on a location on a tower with two actors. That's why it doesn't match. It always grieves me. But when we did a digital master of it a year or so ago, I thought, shall I match it in or not? And I thought, no, I shouldn't, because that's nature of what it was. Anyway, but then most of the scenes shot on a stage with a translight backing. Basically a slide of the background, and we had to deal with that, and that had its own problems, because after the scene as shown, the stormtroopers come in the window, which is kind of a bit hard thing to do on a set when you've only got a backing 15 feet from the window, and blah blah. So anyway. Where am I going with that?
And when you get a new script, how do you get to the light, or to the thing? How do you get to the idea, the final image in your head? How do you get that? Would you write something down on a script, or do you engage in conversation first with James, perhaps, or?
Well, we talk about it, but you have to talk to the director to see what the director thinks they're making, because they could think they're making something completely different than we think the script is.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, I think, you read a novel, you read a film script, the images come in your head, you have a feel of it, but when you're working with a director, you really want to get the sense of what the director's take on the script is before you go any further. Yeah.
So me as a student, when I get a script and I'm trying to think of things, what would you say are the first things you write down? Like, these are the key things I need to know, besides the fact that it already says day and night. But what is there something you write down before anything else on the side line of the script?
Well, I guess maybe questions like, well, how does he get from that location to or how does that location turn over? Anything that you look at that you're not exactly sure, that isn't very clear in the script how it might be done, that's a good thing to bring up.
So you know how you can tell it, right? Perfect.
Well, every director works in a different way. I mean, I would never pretend to suggest to Joel and Ethan how they change a scene or drop a scene or need a new scene or need a link shot or something. A link shot maybe I might suggest or something. But, whereas with other directors, I've had long conversations over weeks and weeks, going through the script or working on storyboards and then suggesting, well, we don't need that scene, or we don't need anybody to say anything there. It can all be done visually, and so you kind of build up like that. But every director's different, Some want that collaboration, and frankly, some don't, and it's fair enough. That's up to them.
Any further questions on this topic? Here we are, Lucia.
So now that we're talking about, the way you approach a script, and earlier on you mentioned documentary. Thank you. Hi. So I was wondering, actually, I had this question before, but I was thinking for a while if I should ask it or not, but I'm just going to go for it.
Go for it.
So if I'm not mistaken, before shooting some fiction films, you've done documentary. And so I was wondering if that affected you or influenced you somehow in the way you approach, you know, the way you work in a fiction film or the way you work on a script. Because I'm not really familiar with documentary. I'm a student, so I've only filmed like student projects here which are fictional. But I'm also interested in documentary. I'm a cinematography student, just so you know, I'm not, So what I'm trying to say is, what's your approach in fictional movies and then in documentary? And is there any of those that you enjoy more than the other? I don't know. Yeah, thank you.
No, I really enjoyed shooting documentary. Well, enjoy is probably the wrong word, but I really valued the experience it gave me, a life experience, even probably more than actually the idea of working on film. It was just experiencing the places that I went and the people I met. And I think that does have a big impact on the way I see things on a film set, with actors, because, with a documentary, unless it's a constructed film, which is not the kind that I did many of, you would be following people in a real situation, and you would be anticipating what was going to happen next, and where you should stand and how you should cover it in terms of, well, should I keep the camera running here and hold it while this conversation goes on, or should I now find ways of going in and shooting reaction shots or whatever, and I think that has a big influence on the way I react to seeing a scene being blocked on a set.
I think also in documentaries you have one chance to get it, so you are thinking about the cut in your head and you're thinking what will be more impactful and tell the story more. Okay, maybe the two shot because we need to indicate the other person's reaction or whatever. So I think that carries on to features.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good skill because oftentimes on features you might not have a lot of time in the day. What are the shots that will tell the story best if we only get to have 3? Something like that.
Yeah, and also I think that the documentaries kind of informs you that you need to see the characters within the space they're inhabiting. Doesn't really mean much if you've got a lot of close-ups with nothing else. I think documentaries kind of teach you is the wrong word, but actually you can see from documentaries you don't need a lot of cuts, you don't need a lot of coverage. If what's in the frame is strong enough, you can just sit there and watch it and observe it and be part of it, and I think that's had a big effect on. But again, I say that, but it's a director's approach to a film. I could say, well, I don't think we need close-ups, and the director, there's a very famous film where the cinematographer, who was a great friend, refused to shoot close-ups, and the director went back, reshot a load of the scenes in the film with somebody else, and shot all close-ups to go in the piece. So hey, sometimes, he made a stand. He said, I don't think you need close-ups. I don't want to shoot your close-ups. I thought that was really
stupid.
Fair enough. No, I thought it was,
No, really.
I admire him for doing it, I think it would have been better without them myself. But
Who's down for a documentary now? I'm kind of excited myself. Well, we know you work together on the next fragment, and Andy from Master's Program is going to ask a question, quite an essential topic, if you ask me. So but first, the clip. Andy. Yeah. That was actually not planned.
Well, we have 2 questions in that case. We were curious on how you approach when you have to work with lighting continuity, especially in outdoors. And then the second question is how you manage, how you work with your script supervisor in that cases, and vice versa. Yeah.
Well, I mean, lighting-wise, again, it depends on how you're shooting the film. I mean, if it's with Joel and Ethan, right, Cohen, I mean, I know what the shots were well in advance. I'd have the storyboards, and I'd sit down with the first assistant AD and probably the script supervisor as well, and go through an order of shooting, and it'd be based on, you know, where the light would be at a certain time of day, and the logistical implications of the way you shoot it. You know, obviously things have to be done in sequence on if it's a complex piece of action or something. So I would always do that. But on a film like this, although I think there's a book of storyboards of the whole film, it would have been nicer probably if we had them before we shot, but we didn't. So, you know, the scene on the roof was basically we looked at it with the actors and we figured it out at the time. And then, yeah, then on the day you'd say, well, can I shoot this way first? But I mean, frankly, the little clip that you showed, I didn't have that much option. I was just trying to shoot towards the sunlight and then stage the characters in a way that, you know, they weren't flat front lit, but I mean, a couple are. The most important part of that whole scene was the time lapse when you get to the sunset and they're sitting around drinking the beer. That had to be very, very specific. And I remember we worked out what shot we were going to do in the morning, so I knew after we'd shot the tarring scene, you know, what equipment I needed to have on the roof and how to set it up, and then just waited for the light. So.
Yeah, but then another example is No Country for Old Men, the dawn shot,
yeah.
Knowing ahead of time that dawn is so short, but there were a certain number of shots that need to be done, and scheduling that at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, and shooting something else, but then having everything set up so you could come back from the other location and grab that shot, and each day get a shot or two.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't do it with every director, but with Joel and Ethan, once I explained what I was trying to do, and I went out and I scouted these locations every morning and evening to see what time I wanted to shoot. And then, again, sat with the AD and went through the whole logistics of it and found that, well, there's some night shooting. We could do a shot in the morning and a shot in the evening, you know, either end of a night shoot. And then sometimes it was like we were on a day shoot that we wanted afternoon light for, but maybe we could stay on and get a very late shot on the river to go with the scene. So it was all like a jigsaw that you had to kind of put together. But I mean, it only really works like that when you have sort of storyboarded it and you've got very specific
and you know
shots
what you're
in
shooting,
mind.
yeah.
But I did a diagram of the river, and you would see it, and the camera was like here looking towards the dawn, and that was shot 6A or something, whatever. And then another shot would be marked on, and that would be, you know, after sunset at between 6:30 and 7 in the evening or whatever, 7:30 or 8 or something, and it was all marked in like, you know, 30-minute sections, which shots I wanted to do. And basically that's what we did. I mean, it worked out pretty well, really.
And the other thing that you do in prep is you go through and you see maybe certain exterior scenes that might be problematic, and you try and beg that they have enough cover sets. Because if they have cover sets and the weather is not, because maybe you have two scenes that butt each other and they need to sort of have the same weather, and you've shot one of the scenes and then the other scene's coming up later, and the weather's not the same. If you have weather cover, you can ask them, can we do a weather cover day and come back on a day that equal? Because you can change a lot of things with visual effects. You cannot change the weather. I mean, it just...
Well, actually...
I've
seen some scenes which were shot on a sunny day and they made it look like cloudy and raining.
Well,
they didn't look good, but they do it.
But you remember Unbroken, that shot never fit in. And then we also had the situation in 1917 because it's all shot in one take, and we had to have the same day. No, the segments had to blend. so that was even more critical, because if you had a change of weather, you would see that. So we spoke in the beginning, and Roger said, we got to shoot when it's cloudy. And the director said, yeah, no problem. And you know that that's not going to happen. But we did manage to do that. And we got very lucky because we got a really good cloudy summer.
We got very lucky. I don't know what would have happened if we hadn't. It would have been blood on the floor, I think.
Yeah, right.
Does anyone have a question on this? The microphone, maybe? Oh, there we are. That was easy.
Hi.
Hi.
So as you said before, that working as a team is a lot easier. So choosing one project from another as a team, how does it work? How do you choose one?
Well, I mean, that presupposes we get offered a lot of projects at the same time.
We do,
I mean, we get offered quite a bit, but no, but we're very in sync. We're very in sync. I mean, you know, we read the script and we just discuss it, and
yeah, we talk about it, and we talk about, well, having someone else to bounce off of is good, because you can say, well, do you think that it actually could go this way? In which case we wouldn't really like it, or this is the strength of the script. And we talk about it, because sometimes we're not exactly sure, so we go back and forth. And then if we think that it might be good, then we meet with the director. And sometimes you meet with the director and you just see the signs that what they want to do is completely different. And I grew up with a lot of very crazy people, so I'm very good at reading behind what people are saying. And so afterwards we'll go, oh, I don't know. And so we've backed away from certain projects, and we've been right, you know. But it is just a matter.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's just instinct and taste and.
Yeah, and do you care about the story, because you're going to be spending a long time? If it means something, and it's funny, you never know what's going to strike the chord and what isn't.
Brilliant. Any more? Shall we go on to the next? I'm sure people have had some kind of misunderstanding at some point with your script supervisor, or with the continuity, or. No?
Oh wow.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Wow, I'm going to come work
Who's teaching
here.
these scripts? Great. Next, we have our last two fragments. These will be, the question will be asked by José Luis. I'm not sure. There he is. Right. Well, first the two fragments. That sequence just... My hands were sweaty already, but now... José Luis, please.
Hi, Roger. Hi, James.
Hi.
I hope Barcelona has been treating you well.
Yeah, definitely.
Regarding these two sequences from 1917 and Prisoners, how is your initial interaction with your gaffer? You said earlier that you come in with a plan, and I guess you build it with your gaffer from there. Would you be able to walk us through that initial conversation with Chris Higgins from 1917 and Chris Napolitano for Prisoners, and if possible, compare and contrast those two scenes in terms of lighting? Thank you.
Well, I think the biggest contrast between the two scenes is the one from Prisoners is so much an actor's scene, in that that was really intense shooting that. I don't know if we did it more than once or twice, but I'm sure not more than twice. I mean, it was really intense. Everybody was very, very kind of strung up by that scene. So, and that's part of the reason it's shot in the frame it's shot in. In terms of lighting, it's a very, very different approach to. I mean, that was a set actually. We built that toilet and that little apartment where he was kept prisoner was a little set. But in terms of lighting, it's much more sort of minimal. I mean, basically it was lit by the bare bulb above the mirror, and that was at night, wasn't it? So there wasn't even any daylight, which I wasn't even creating daylight on that scene. So it was very, very simple and raw. Whereas the scene from 1917, I mean, the discussion of what that looked like went way back to the design of the town, this abandoned, kind of blown up town, which is obviously based on Ypres or something like that. The whole thing had to be designed for the journey, George, the main character's journey through it, and finding a way of him discovering the center of town, and then getting to the basement, and then coming out of the basement after the conversation with the woman, and then trying to escape and getting shot at and going to the river. So you take all those beats in the script and figure, well, how's that going to go in the overall, like a bird's eye view of the plan. And then I said early on to Sam and the production designer, okay, I'm not going to do it as moonlight. That's just not going to happen. It's not the film where you can have moonlight. That's just silly. So I said, well, it's got to be lit by something, so there should be something on fire. And I think that's when the idea of the burning church came in. And then it was a matter, okay, you've got this burning church, how do we want to reveal it? But then he's coming from the canal, and then I don't know where the idea of the flares came from. Maybe it was in the script, I don't know. I remember looking at a lot of visual references of flares and how we could do that. So then you say, well, this whole opening section can be when he wakes up from being knocked out in the lockhouse. He wakes up and these flares are lighting this town, and it's like a ghost. We figured it was like, at that point, we figured he might have woken up and been in a dream or a nightmare. And so we thought we could stylize it. So then the idea of the town being lit by this great inferno sounded really good, because it's like he's journeying towards hell. So then we had to figure out, okay, so how's this one light source going to light all his journey then down to the basement, where we can have something in the basement. But then he comes out and runs and gets accosted by the Germans and whatever. So it was a matter of designing it all to this central lighting source. But the lighting source itself is obviously not a burning church. It's actually this huge rig. And that's where basically I started talking to John Higgins, the gaffer. And I said, I want to create this really, it's got to be as large as the actual, you can't do it. The producer would have loved it if I did it with like half a dozen lights and they were all on stands on the floor, but you can't. The source is big, so you have to do a big light source. But also I had to have it so that I could change the intensity as the action's moving around the town. So anyway, that's how, that's when my relationship with a gaffer kicked in, was when after that concept came on, and how to physically construct something that was, it could only be 50 feet tall, because it couldn't be taller because it was on the flight path to Heathrow. Yeah, right. And they won't let us go any taller. So it's 5 tiers and it's about 50 feet high. And, then it was figuring, okay, which I need more light when the character goes down into the basement. So I had concentrated some lights in that direction, but the whole thing had to be like one big soft light. So it's basically this on a very, very vast scale. So yeah, but again, I had a plan and I'd drawn it out, and yeah,
it also, they built the set around the lighting. That doesn't always happen.
Yeah, and then we had a pre-light night. We had a pre-light night of maybe a week or so before we shot the scene, because we had some of the lights up, and we went there one night and put them on, and the town was being built about it. We had to build the light before they constructed the whole town, because we couldn't have done it if the thing was built. And so we put some lights on, and they got some walls up, and then I talked with the art director and walked through it and said, well, I need a gap here because I need to see Schofield when he's going to the basement here. I need slashes of light coming through here because we're pulling back with him, and that would be good. So it was all that kind of, discussion really, but yeah.
You seem to always have everything very, very planned out before you start. Likewise, in that first sit down with your gaffer, do you expect him to bring proposals to the table? Do you guys run it back and forth? Do you appreciate a gaffer that proposes a lot?
I do, but I've got a very clear plan of where I want to go. Mm-hmm. So it's really more about the logistics of scheduling it, or what. Maybe there's a different fixture we can use to do something. It's rarely, I can't remember where it's been. I remember one time where it was actual change on how we lit something. It's usually about what fixture, and I've usually underestimated the amount of light I need. So that cathedral, that church in 1917 got bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, we used about every maxi brute we could find, basically.
But the other thing too is when we did something in Australia, and we had a local grip and gaffer there, and I talked to them because Roger's very specific and he only wanted this equipment, and they kept going, well, we're going to bring this and this and this. And I sat him down and said, he does know, and he doesn't like a lot of extra stuff, so you don't need to bring it. And of course the grip just brought what he wanted, but the gaffer kept coming up to me and going, you're sure, right, James? You're sure that he doesn't want extra stuff?
Yeah, because I think I like to know where I want things and work it out, so I can say to production, yeah, well, I want a 75-foot crane here, but I don't need any lights, or I need that rig for the church, but I don't need anything else for the rest of the film. And I didn't use. Well, there was one time I used a couple of lights, but otherwise it was pretty well no other lights. So it's the biggest lighting job I've ever done, but it was on that one scene.
Look at that. That's crazy. Any questions on this subject? Don't be shy. It's all right. Oh, here we are.
Hi. Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
Hi.
So, I'm a first-year student here, and I'm familiar that you did, or you were involved, for Roger, you were involved in the film How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah.
My question was that, is it easier to, put the light on an animation film, because you don't test, we were all talking about, or we were watching clips from live action movies that you can test the light on then, but is it easier or is it more complicated to do it in the animation style? You can put all your imagination in there, or it's still
it's the problem has been is that the software wasn't acting like a real light acted. So it became in the beginning when we first started, and that made it harder, because if you wanted to do a bounce light, you had a light going this way, but then you had to put in a light going that way.
Yeah, they couldn't do soft light. It just took too much programming power on the first How to Train Your Dragon. But it's interesting. I mean, we started off working on Wall-E before that, and then Rango, and then How to Train Your Dragon, and each time with different facilities, we've talked about the nature of light and how you kind of create bounce light. And it was kind of ironic, because the time we were working on the third How to Train Your Dragon, and the last one, some of the there's big crews, and the way it's split is different. Like, you have a visual effects supervisor that's actually supervising the lighting, which is odd. And you have somebody that's doing the layout and the camera shot, but they're not related to anybody doing the lighting. And it's odd. But anyway, by the last one, what they were doing, they had this they could go out in a forest and take a 360 scan or whatever. They take the lighting in the forest and basically then they can transfer that lighting that they've captured onto their animation, which is also a scene in a forest. And we would look at this and I said, yeah, but it's clever, but it looks awful. They said, but that's what it looks like in a forest. But I said, well, then go and sit in a forest. You're making a film. You're not actually, you know what I mean? And it's like sometimes they strive so much for a reality that it goes too far that actually, I mean, surely the nature of cinematography is molding reality to help tell a story. It's not actually reflecting exactly what's there. Even if you're shooting a documentary, you put yourself in a position relative to the subject and maybe take the light into account. You don't just sort of like blanket it. So I thought that's really interesting. It was just going too far. But,
yeah, no, it's interesting because also you have animators and they're kind of like the actors on this production. And if you light something and make one corner dark, they get upset because they've animated a character there with wonderful expressions and you can't see it because you've made it dark in that side of the frame. And also because it's a medium that was so much for children for a long time, the default is bright, colorful, and if you're trying to create a look, it's just a struggle sometimes.
Yeah, it was a bit on How to Train a Dragon. We had to convince Jeffrey Katzenberg. I mean, I'm sure, yeah, he'd be fine with me saying it now. We had to convince him that some of the scenes could be as dark as they were. And we were watching dailies with him one day, and he said, yeah, maybe that could be darker. And
Maybe
we thought,
you're
we've
right.
actually got somewhere. And I thought that was, everybody sort of like went, wow. He wondered, he looked around, everyone went, wow, good, okay. But, you know, it's different in animation because you're working with a whole team of people. I'm not actually lighting it. There's a whole team of people doing the lighting and the layout, and we're just there sort of like, you know, as part of the team making suggestions and that. And probably the most influence we've had on those films was actually early on in, you know, conceptualizing it and like the choice of locations. I mean, it's on a computer, but it's a choice of the kind of the world, the scene. You know, is it a cloudy day or what kind of clouds are in the sky, and that kind of influence really, and you know, and the camera style.
We also think that there's a great possibility to do some really wonderful things in animation if you're willing not to think of it completely as a movie. I mean, remember on one of them we were thinking if they did it as line drawings, it could be really interesting.
Yeah, I think there's too much. Yeah, too much concentration on reality, and it gets a bit samey.
Right, and on the subject of quality of light and all this, we know you're quite partial to tungsten lighting usually. How was your experience lately, for example, with Empire of Light? And did you notice any key differences that you might take on to future projects? Like no, yes. What were your experience?
Yeah, I mean, LEDs have been around for quite some time, really. I mean, we were using a number of LEDs on Blade Runner and prior to that, but it's just, you know, it's like going towards a digital capture. You know, it's at some point something is evolved to a state where it actually is beneficial to take it on rather than stick what you know. The thing I love about tungsten light is that you dim it and it becomes warm. And to do that with an LED, you have to have a bicolor LED, and then you have to program it to become warm as it dims to a certain level. It becomes kind of complicated. But got that, you just dim it down and it's warm and it looks like firelight. You know, that's why I would use it, you know. Yeah, and you could stick 3-circuit it, and then each bulb is like they're flickering in different levels, so it looks like a firelight, you know.
Calm down, I had 2 days to do it.
But I mean, it was helpful in Empire of Light to do the lobby set with all of those LEDs because Yeah, because we had to have light it with practicals, and also in different situations, and we could change it quickly.
It's the balance between the interior light and the daylight. And obviously the daylight was changing. I mean, it was winter, and it was like changing dramatically between, dawn, midday, and dusk. So I wanted to be able to change cool down the interior lights or warm them up depending on what it looked like outside. I mean, it was easier said than done, but that was part of the advantage of using, LED strips and stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's huge advantages to LED lighting, but yeah, there's odd disadvantages. But I guess it's like I would say about cameras, I think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, and you can't take both with you. It's just too expensive for a production. So you choose the lights that best work for that situation. I mean, there might be a movie, I don't know when, there might be a movie where you say, well, if we had 4 brute arcs, that's all we would need, and that would be better than anything else. I don't know. Maybe, who knows? But
you often, because LEDs are more expensive to rent, but then you always have to say to production, yes, but you're using less electricity.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing, generation and everything, yeah. It's all a balance. It's the same with lighting any set or going on a movie, and usually on a movie you might have specific sets like the church in 1917, but the other time you might only want a small package that you take with from day to day. So it's just, okay, so what's in that package? What is going to work on a night shot where you want to mold the light a bit in someone's face, and what's going to also be able to work on a firelit scene or a day interior, so you have to have something that is, you can't have a light for every different task. We can, but a producer's not going to light you very much.
Shall we go on to the projects, or you want to do a few questions first? I'm looking at you, yeah. Yeah, projects? All right, well, when we were talking about this conversation, we entertained the idea of showing you some of our own stuff.
Great.
So we'll show what we have time for, and some of the DPs will perhaps bring up something they had trouble with, or a challenge or something, so we can learn from each other's challenges. Are you comfortable there? Do you want to maybe?
No, I'm okay. It's a bit odd, but it's okay. Bit dark.
Sometimes I think about who I was when I didn't care about being someone. It seems like my skin was different before. Thinner, tougher. Until I started to notice the wind in a different way. And everything started to hurt more. My feet felt heavier as I walked. And my voice started to speak to me like I'd never been spoken to before. I, who had never raised my voice to anyone, learned to scream at who I never was. When I closed my eyes, I tried to follow the steps I left on the wet ground. As if there was some answer in my footprints to all the questions I never finish asking. And I apologize for never being where I should be, and for never knowing where I am. I apologize for wanting to name what I feel without wanting to find a remedy. And in the midst of others, I have more and more fears. But sometimes, among what I remember, I find glimpses of what have yet to become. The first I have to feel something that I still don't know what it is. And it's okay. Maybe in this back and forth is where the secret that I've hidden lies. I never find it anyways, but the secret will remain in me, shining from within, blinding me like the sun, which hurts my eyes every second, but feels so good that it makes me want to keep looking into the light, a light that burns, but reminds me that I can feel, a light that is left unsaid.
Well, this was a project of Laura from master's degree. She shot it on 35mm film and 8mm. There she is. Oh. Any specific challenge you would like to bring up?
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to show you our short film.
Thank you.
I want to say that it's a work in progress, so it's not finished. And yeah, so in this short film, I played with the change of format because we only had 2-minute 35mm film. So, and I didn't want to match it with digital. So I decided that I would change to the Super 8mm film to also make it like a, have it importance in the narrative inside the story. So because I only had a 2-minute 35mm film, I wanted to try and experiment. I wanted to make the most of it, so I want to try different situations and lighting conditions that I haven't tried before. And so, so that's why we created 3 different stories to give each one of them a different atmosphere. And so the Super 8mm film helped me to unify all of them. And so I specifically wanted to shoot sunset and sunrise because I wanted myself to practice not having the complete control of the situation. And this was actually one of my biggest challenges because we had to pay a lot of attention to the time, the sun pass, and unexpected situations like sudden clouds that we had to adapt. So I convinced my friends to come scouting with me in the middle of nowhere and actually sitting there during the sunset to actually know when and where exactly the sun is going down and deciding when exactly I wanted each shot. Because when you shoot sunset and sunrise, you only have a few good minutes. And so one of the other challenge I had was deciding which shot was the most important to shoot at that specific time and actually shooting it at the time that we wanted. And just making our best with the rest of the shots in the scene in terms of continuity because it won't have the same lighting conditions, of course. So yeah, thank you very much.
So was anything digital or was just 35 and 8mm?
It's just 35 and Super 8mm film.
And how long did you have to shoot it?
We had a day and a half, kind of.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
because we went in the afternoon to shoot the sunset, then the next day the sunrise, and we had another day to shoot the interiors here in the plateau.
Oh wow! Yeah, I thought some of the interiors looked great. I thought it was really, especially when the argument where the guy is arguing with the girl and the girl's kind of front lit and he's in shadow. I thought that was
great. Yeah,
reminded me of something I did in The End of Prisoners, where the shadowed character. I thought it was great. Okay, if I had one thing, I would say just because. And maybe it's just for me, the sunrise and the idea of the ocean and the beauty and the girl looking at this vision, I don't know, I'd have done that on 35mm and done the rest on Super 8, really. You know what I mean? Because it was just the sort of the tranquility and the view of that, and I found the graininess of that distracted from what the scene was.
Yeah, actually one of my other challenges was that I had to expose to the sky. So it was like the rest, we will see how it comes out. And that was the result, It was my first time shooting sunrise, so of course I could have done something better, but...
And it's also somewhere where any grain or noise will show up more than anywhere else in a sky like that, especially when it's going, blue Twilight. It's amazing how noisy it can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Great,
much.
thank you.
On to the next, I guess. Would you rather move the chairs? Or?
No.
No, that's all right. No.
This looks familiar to me.
No, that's not it.
This is shot by Jose from master's degree as well. So I might have left out the fact that it's not just short films; it's also recreations, things that inspire us.
We kind of got that.
Jose, there he is.
Hi, how are you doing? So this is a recreation of Jarhead, obviously. First of all, I'm sorry. This is kind of weird. It's like meeting one of your favorite musicians. Showing him a cover he did of one of his top songs with the brothers in the basement. So, yeah, don't mind the art direction and the sniper rifle. But yeah, one of the biggest problems I had was managing the space, because the set we have is not as big as I would have wanted, and I had. Maybe 12 by 40, 12 by 35 foot white SIG, to which I bounced about 20K of blondies that I had on top of the window on a goalpost. So I had to put the SIG in a sort of semicircular configuration on rollers to move it and complete the full coverage I needed for the whole scene. On top of that, I had like a 5K flanelle broken up with, I believe it was like a 1x1 highlight or something like that. Hampshire, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
I was just trying to think what I used because it was a blue screen, wasn't it? Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Which was really painful with all that glass, I remember. All the broken glass. But we did do blue screen, and some of the keys on the glass was really difficult, but I can't, because it was a blue screen, I remember I couldn't put the light as low as you put it, which was frustrating.
It's also the projector. It's not as low as I shot it. Yeah.
No, I mean, but you've got a white cyc outside the window, right?
Yeah.
Well, we had a blue screen,
yeah.
So the hard thing is you can't put a light where the blue screen is if you've got it in shot. But I mean, I could bring something in if a certain amount of blue screen wasn't in shot, which made it really better, but it was really tricky, I remember, but I can't remember what I actually used. Yeah. No, I mean, it looked good. What was it on? Was it on 35?
No, it's digital.
Oh, is it? See, I can't tell the difference. I can't. Yeah.
That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, on to the next. Sorry in advance.
Oh.
That's funny.
Wow.
Once again, sorry, but well, one of my biggest challenges with this was that we probably shot this in 5 or 6 hours in the afternoon, and it was on a plateau, so that includes building the set, a large part of it, not all of it. But so one of my, besides some technical aspects, of course, as the smoke not settling or not being able to make enough fire inside of a school to actually make it look, not put CGI in.
Yeah, lucky you didn't burn it down, yeah.
We made one, but just the one small one, and then added more, very obviously. But yeah, so for me was managing this, of course, we had some shots where the smoke was more settled, some were not, stuff like this. And obviously sometimes you have to prioritize the acting, because it's a lot better in one shot than others. Mm-hmm. So managing the small amount of time and having to make compromises on set between just the way you want it, and you can only shoot it a few times, and there's other things that are more important. So for me, that was my biggest challenge for sure, is coming to terms to, trying to find the middle ground to get the piece as a whole as a priority. The best.
I think that's a good thing to learn, because that's never going to change.
Right, that's what I mean.
It's always a compromise. I think I would say every shot I've ever done has been a compromise in some way. I'd look at it and think, I wish I'd have done.
When we see a movie after, when it first cut or something, when we finally see the movie after shooting it, we always are disappointed. And we always go, oh dear, it takes us about 5 years before we look at it and go, I guess it wasn't that bad.
Actually, was it a 20-year anniversary of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah, that was a surprise.
I thought the film looked really great then. I mean, it was a great film then, I thought.
It took that long, though.
20 years later. But it was a very happy version of Barton Fink, wasn't it?
Well, we tried to make it a little bit of our own story, so we didn't want to copy a sequence. We wanted to tell a little bit of story. Sorry, yeah.
It's very sunny.
It is very sunny.
You've got a brick wall outside, but it's very sunny. I did question that. Because I'm laughing because I remember struggling when the boys said with Dennis, and I'd not worked with him before, they said, well, I think
Dennis is the production designer.
Dennis Gassner, who did 1917 as well. I mean, I've worked with forever, but when I first met them and they were saying about the Barton Fink's room, and they wanted it to look out on a bare wall, and I thought, well, that's interesting because it's not interesting, but what do I do? You're looking at a bare wall, so where are you going to light from outside? Do you want to light from outside? Yeah, you do, because you want to feel the day changing. You want to feel a glimpse of sunlight coming in from somewhere just to make the shift with, the other scenes when they get a bit more somber. So, yeah, I remember that being a big struggle. So I thought, well, that was all right. You've got a really nice sunny room there. It's very pretty.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we were intended on inspiring off Barton Fink and transmitting that on this, but at the same time, try and make it a little bit of our own story, to have a beginning and an end to it.
Yeah.
So, we gave it our own touch. But
the other problem is glasses, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I had this conversation with my teacher. the answer was pretty funny because it's how does Hollywood do it to not see things in the eyes in the glasses? And the answer was pretty much they don't always manage.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Sometimes you can.
I couldn't
Well, it's-
think. It was a nightmare because there's hardly a shot without glasses on. But I tried everything, and then of course they have the sort of non-reflective glasses,
yeah.
but then it reflects something back that's green. I mean, maybe now digitally you wouldn't worry about it so much, but it was horrible. So there are a few shots in Barton Fink where I just took the glass out.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever said anything.
Look at that. I'll write that down for the next time.
That's a good trick.
Definitely. On to the next.
Especially good trick now because you can do that and they can paint in a reflection in
Right,
CG.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, I hope they do better than we painted in the fire.
Right, right.
Well, just before Alexander gets to talking, I do want to reiterate, these projectors do not do us any favors. Go on.
Well, yeah, as you said, yeah, it looks a lot more saturated and contrasty than in other projectors and other screens. But, well, so this was my first time shooting in film, and so we kept it simple with the director. We just made a little story, and it was visually interesting, and basically to learn how to shoot on 35, basically. So yeah, so we found a good location, and yeah, we recce'd it and saw where the positioning of the sun, which kind of broke my head a bit, trying to think with the position of the shots and the sun and everything, and yeah, we just used some bounces, and a lot of times the clothes that were hanging would do the bouncing itself, so we barely needed any light except maybe a reflector to change the direction, and that's it.
Right, you got to use mirrors as well, right?
Yeah,
Flag
mirrors,
off the sun,
exactly.
and then get to fake the direction of the sun. Yeah, that's great.
I think the first person to use mirrors was Keizu Miyagawa on Rashomon, I think. That's the first place I ever read that somebody was using mirrors. Did you do a film finish, or was the negative scanned, or how did it?
Well, it came in all of the 35 mils came in a batch of from a lab in Romania. So
Romania.
Yeah.
Funny.
It's funny, it's like our go-to lab.
Funny.
Yeah, we didn't quite know what type of scan it was, so we just worked with what we had with the colorist,
But I
And,
mean, did you have a print? Did you have a film print of it? Is the lab here that printed it, or you developed a 35mm negative? And what happened then?
Well, yeah, they kind of. I'm not quite sure exactly what they did, but we kept our.
But have you got a film projector here? Did you watch a film print?
No.
It got scanned.
No. So you shot a negative, and then the lab scanned it, and you saw a digital.
They got it, they shot it, they sent it back, and they got digital.
Right.
Yeah.
So
material
did you?
back.
Wow.
They never gave you anything like printer lights.
No.
So did you ever understand which shot might have been more overexposed or underexposed than another? Do you know where your exposures were?
I kind of knew on set.
Well, you know, on set you got a light meter, right?
Yeah.
You were using a light meter.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
you didn't get anything back from the lab.
No.
To tell you if your exposures were right.
No,
or if they were up and down.
No, it didn't.
See, I think that's it's kind of sad because, you know, when you're shooting film and you're printing the negative on a print stock and watching it, you get, the lab sends you a readout of what printer lights, what amount of light was needed for each shot. So that, then you can translate that into how thick or thin the negative was and whether you had exposed it correctly or too much or too little. And so now, you know, you shoot, I shoot on digital or whatever, and it just comes back and some colorist or timer or whatever is, giving you what they think is a flat, evenly exposed thing. But you don't know what you've actually done on that original, which I think is a big shame.
Yeah, we got it back basically like if it was a digital shoot.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Wow.
right.
Yeah. So, well, I have the negative with me.
Yeah. Well, it's a pity because even when they weren't printing a negative and it was going straight to a file, I would ask the lab to time the negative. They wouldn't print it, but they would send it through the timing, Hazeltine, and the timer would tell me what it would be if it was being printed, and that just informed me there where my exposures were, you know. But yeah, but I'm sorry, I'm then going on. That was really nicely done. Yeah. But it did look a lot saturated, so it's projector,
Yeah, the projectors don't do the colorist or us any favors.
Right.
They really don't. But
do you sit with a colorist and time it then? Do you shift the colors if you want to?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a few colorist friends, especially one that's indebted with half this room. The other way around, half this room is indebted with him because he does a lot of favors. And what we do is we sit down with him for hours on end and we go through the whole process together.
That's good.
So that way we can reap as much of our own work as with him hand to hand until we get there. Well, in principle, that's all the projects we have time for, but now is time for any free rapid fire questions. Also, may I remind you, you can ask them in Spanish. I will translate them to them. Si tenéis preguntas en castellano o en catalán o lo que sea, decírmelas y yo se la puedo traducir a ellos. First question from Marlene.
So it's happened to me multiple times that a lot of your shots have reminded me of dream states, and I was very curious to know if you've ever gotten inspiration from a dream.
Interesting question.
You'd have to remember your dreams to do that.
No, I often do. Visually, not really. I don't think so. I don't know. Like I said earlier, though, you're kind of like a product of everything that goes in, isn't it? You know, it could be the dream. It could be, Edward Munch's paintings or the Scream. It could be, your version of the Scream in your dream. I don't know. It just your mind's constantly flowing with imagery. So I would imagine they've had an effect. But I do sometimes get confused about whether I dreamt something or it was something I actually experienced. I find that really disconcerting. I don't know if other people do, and it's got nothing to do with filmmaking, I guess, but I do get sometimes very concerned about a dream and whether it was real.
Happens to me too.
Just, you know, just saying.
Here we are. Pao over there had a question.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first is, what inspires to you to be a cinematographer? And the second is, bueno, no sé cómo decirla en inglés, la verdad, es si nos podría dar algún consejo para ser directores de fotografía.
Or for those who aspire to actually reach DP, because there's a lot of people here that want to be focus pullers and this and that. So, one piece of advice for him as an aspiring DP to get to that end, to be a director of photography.
My advice is what I always say is don't try and copy me. I know you're doing these things here, but don't try and copy anybody.
Find your own eye.
I mean, find inspiration in other people's work, but find your own way of doing things and find your own way of seeing. I know that's an overused expression, but I think it's right that you find your own emotional reaction to a script or a situation or a visual, or we don't see things the same. Like we don't all like the same novels or the same music, and I think that's if an audience takes something from the imagery of a film, it's something that I wouldn't say it's just that they haven't seen before, but it's a different perspective on something. You can't just learn how to light, the room in Barton Fink, and okay, that's great. Technically, you can light, but what does that mean? If it has no emotional connection to the story and the script, then it's meaningless. It's just eye candy. And I think that's really important. Why I'm here, I have no idea. I just like making images. I kind of, I suppose, wanted to be a photojournalist, but I probably don't have the nerve to do what I really wanted to do, So I did documentaries for a while, and then that just sort of segued into doing dramas, and I would have been more than happy staying in documentaries. I really enjoyed it, but at a certain point I felt, try see what I can do in shooting movies, and it was only then that I realised, my God, that's what I loved when I was a kid, and now I'm sort of part of it. It's very strange, but yeah.
Magical.
Thank you.
We had a question over here as well.
Hi.
Hi.
Do you have any film of yours that you're especially proud of?
I think proud is an odd word. I mean, there's certain films I think that within themselves are better than others, for sure. I think just the best film I've ever worked on as a piece was probably The Man Who Wasn't There. Just filmically, there's something about it that kind of fits as its own entity. On the other hand, I think the most meaningful film I've ever been part of was 1984. So, I mean, I don't, you judge things on different. One of the best experiences I've ever had on a film was probably on Kundun, but that was because of the people we met, So those are all different things that, you remember and love about a movie.
We had a question over there, I think. Yes?
Hi, Roger, how are you?
Hi, good.
Mine maybe it's more like a quite personal question, not like technical, and it's kind of quite similar to his question. It was like, for you as a person who has been like working all these years on industry and you have done a lot of works, when you look back, you feel truly realized with your work, or do you feel like you have a lot more things to do?
Yeah, I look back and think all the things that I probably could have or should have done more. but I've also at the same time looked back and how lucky I've been, or we've been. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's always that, isn't it?
But there's definitely more in you.
There's a lot I'd like to do more, but I'm not sure if, I'm not sure if I get the chance, frankly. But there you are, you know. I've just kind of, my gaffer, Billy, said the other day, he said, you might look back on the age that we've had in the film industry and think of it as a golden age. I don't know, that would be sad. But I don't know, it's changing so much, and I'm a product of my time. I love certain kind of filmmaking, and I love films that confront an audience, like, you know, No Country for Old Men is one of my favorite films. Not necessarily because my work on it, I think it's such a great movie. I think it's a great movie. But the book it was based on, I think, is really a brilliant piece of work, and a very strong comment on the world. And I kind of love that. And that's what I'd like to be part of, and that's why I love working on films.
But it's a very strange time now, because we've had the writer's strike and then the actor's strike, and there's been this pause, and the studio, and then we had COVID before, so there was a huge question of whether theatrical would continue or not. And now they've had this pause, and the studios are sort of regrouping and thinking. It's questionable what's going to happen next, and whether it's going to be big superheroes movies and not the smaller, more thought-based things that we particularly like.
Or whether producers take a chance. I mean, that's the thing.
We don't know.
I mean, a lot of the movies that we've been lucky to work on, I mean, I think of being speculative in a way. I mean, some of what I would say were the probably best films, best experiences. The films of box office wise have been total failures. So, you know, whether producers and financiers are going to take those kind of risks in the future, it's hard to say.
And whether there'll be smaller production companies, because they've kind of gone out of business during this time period. So we shall see.
But it's up to you guys. What are you going to kind of like help
We're counting
inspire?
on you.
You know, that's the thing. I think the industry is a little bit in a kind of grey area right now, where it's going to go.
We've been given a mission.
Yeah.
Any other questions over there?
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
Talking about the future, what do you think that AI is going to do with the industry, and specifically with cinematography? Like, there's so many humans in this room that we want to keep working or want to work in the industry. But look at photographers right now, like journalist photography, it's changing so much. You don't know what's been done by a machine, what's been done by humans, so what's your take on that?
Yeah, I didn't want to go there in that last bit of comment. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's a grey area. Where's it going to go? You know, you mentioned, I mean, I'm a photojournalist, you know, I mean, when I was a teenager, a photojournalist, I mean, there were maybe 20 or 30 really great photojournalists that you would see their work and inform you about what was going on in the world. There's maybe 3 or 4 now that you would say are really special. I don't know, the world's changing. AI, I don't know. I mean, on one side, it could open up a whole way of seeing and storytelling, and even if it's not filmmaking as we know it, it might be a way of telling stories or imparting information or inspiring other people in some direction I can't even imagine. On the other hand, it could be very, very scary. I don't know. Like that. Was that AI reacting? You will obey.
We have a question right behind you, lady. Yes.
What already movie would you like to have made? Like, quina pel·lícula li hagués agradat fer?
Well, out of all the movies you've seen, which one would you have liked to have shot yourself?
Oh, the movie I've seen?
Yeah, already existing films.
Which one would you
come
have
on,
liked to
it's
be?
kind of millions in the past, but you know, you kind of think about that, but then, I mean, a film is so much a product of the people that worked on it, you know. I mean, I would immediately say some of the films that Conrad Hall shot, God, I'd love to have shot that. But I love the film because of
He
the
shot it.
combination of what he did with the director. If I'd have done it, it wouldn't be the same film at all. So, you know, I mean, one of my favorite films, I think one of the best made films, two of the best made films I've ever seen, I think, were Conrad Hall's work. And one was In Cold Blood and the other was Fat City. But I, you know, if I'd have been anywhere near either of those, they probably wouldn't have been anything like they are, you know. So, yeah.
It's not as much about having shot it as having been a part of it. That would have been nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Some questions in the back, perhaps. One of them, people. There, it's fine. Yeah.
Vale, a ver si lo formulo bien, eh. How was the experience filming Blade Runner? No lo he formulado bien, ¿no?
Sí, ¿cómo era la
Vale.
experiencia?
Well, interesting about Blade
Big
Runner, you see,
question.
because, you know, like, I mean, I kind of love the original in terms of its look and style, but I was never going to do anything like that. So if I'd have worked on the original, it wouldn't have been that film. You know what I mean? So,
But it was good. It was interesting shooting in Hungary with different crews and the language barrier. That was interesting in a good way. And it was a lot of set work.
yeah, a
so
lot of
that
set
was
work, a lot of very
interesting, yeah.
complicated stuff. But I mean, the joy of working for the third time with Denis was that we knew each other well enough that he loved the pre-production process. He loved just us, the three of us, actually sitting in a room and just talking through the script and talking through ideas, and I love that. I think it's underrated, that time that you can just spend. But I'd say not all directors want that kind of collaboration, but it just happened on, we had that, some of that on Prisoners, on Sicario. We had a lot of time in pre-production talking through the script and finding ways to visualize it. And then we had months and months on Blade Runner, talking through the idea of what the world would look like, talking through ideas of how to create the view of Vegas, for instance, with the red light and the dust and you know, so it was that was a really wonderful experience. Often, I mean, I love that, and when you get to the set, when you get to the nitty-gritty of actually doing it, then I won't say it becomes just mechanical, but it is like you're kind of like in a war zone then. You're hanging on to a schedule. You're trying to do 15 shots a day. You're trying to move the lights from one set to another so you're ready at the beginning of the day shooting. You're trying to convince the producers that you need Sunday for a pre-light, otherwise they won't be shooting before midday on the Monday. You know, there's all these there's all the kind of things you have to do, the technical things and that sort of challenge. I mean, that's partly why I love the job, the combination of hopefully creativity without that being part of it, and then you have to get down to the nuts and bolts, and it becomes very, very technical. You know, the trick is not to allow the technical to sort of swamp the creative, really.
I think we have time for one more question.
We got three. No, go on. Yeah.
Well, okay, we'll see. Yeah, perfect. Your question. Okay.
Have you ever felt the need to direct a movie yourself? And if so, which director you have worked with would be your DP?
Well, that's an interesting.
Because I'm sure there's like stories in your head that are not out there that you'd like to share.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, we've both sort of been attached to things, I mean, a number of years ago now, but it didn't really work out.
I can't imagine a director as a DP. Can you think of anyone?
No, I'd like Denny to be the DP. I put him through what he put me through. No, I'm joking. Yeah. But I know, because the relationship with Denny is really great. So yeah. That would be really interesting.
Yes, it would.
But yeah, I mean, there's stories that I'd love to see told if I directed them. Not more likely, I'd like somebody else to direct them, and then I'd shoot it. And I've mentioned a couple to directors over the years of stories that I have in my head, or I've actually written a script for a couple. But yeah, I love what I do. So
yeah, because I also work as a cinematographer, and sometimes I have the feel that I don't have like the whole cake, because I work very well with some other directors, but it's sometimes you disagree on little things that you'd like to change, and then I have this feeling of wanting to do my own projects. So I think
I suppose when I went to the film school, I didn't really think I was going to be a cinematographer. I kind of felt I was going to be a documentary filmmaker and shoot my own documentaries, and then it just segued into working on other students' dramas, and then it just felt that I'd found a place. I'm really not very comfortable around people. I'm certainly not very comfortable in a studio boardroom trying to sell a script. I have tried. There was one little script that was really nice little script we were attached to, which is about 2 young girls getting lost in the Amazon rainforest, and it was like their exploration of the Amazon, and it ended up with this big conflagration of burning, because they were stripping out, the farmers were burning the Amazon, and you could see all these animals running out of the jungle, and anyway, eventually these kids were on this raft, rather like the Herzog film. Anyway, I loved the script, and I was in pitching the idea to an executive, and the executive said, yeah, it'd be great if one of the girls was Claire Danes in a wet t-shirt. I got up and walked out. I mean, I can't deal with that kind of thing. That was one anecdote. There's more of that.
Well, he's already pitched it to us. Any DP interested? Do we have time for one more? Do we have to cut? Last question. All right, one last question over there in the corner.
In reviewing your filmography, we clearly see that in most of your films, if not a lot at all, especially the most recent ones, you use master prime lens. And I want to ask you, what you keep in mind when you are choosing your lens and for the project, and how it helps you to tell the story. In other films, you put a single glass in front of the lens or something.
Deaconizes.
Yes.
I'm a very simple person. I don't really experiment with lenses very much. I mean, we created some lenses for the assassination of Jesse James, but generally I like the fastest, cleanest, lightest lens, and that's it. So I went from Zeiss lenses to Cooke S4s to master primes, and I've never used anything else.
And signature primes now.
Signature primes on the LF, but I see them as basically the same thing. I mean, I just like lenses that are really clear and as free of artifacts as possible. And
I think shooting anamorphic would kill you because of all the flares. You always think, maybe we'll try it this time, and you look at it and see the flare.
There was one film I wanted to shoot anamorphic, but it didn't actually happen. But I wanted to shoot it anamorphic because I wanted this sort of lack of perspective in it. Actually, I had a very concrete thing in mind, and now I'm feeling depressed because the film never happened. But no, and same camera-wise. I mean, I've shot with Arriflex pretty well exclusively all my life, not because I'm supporting the company or anything, but I like their cameras. Ergonomically, they feel comfortable on my shoulder, and they're much more simple. I like the coaxial magazines of the film cameras rather than the top-mounted magazines. I don't like those. So I'm very, very simple. So I stick to the same gear unless there's some reason not to. Yeah. I don't think it's about, I don't mess with lenses. I've done a lot of different things in processing film stocks and stuff, don't get me wrong, but normally I just like
to capture it cleanly.
I like capture it cleaner and do it. It's about the lighting and the composition to me. It's not, and obviously the placement of the camera and the camera movement. It's not about some quality of a lens or nature of a particular film stock if you put it in hot developer and whatever,
Well, thank you very much for this conversation. That's all we have time for, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you.